clear the polls were off. The polls averaged about 7% for Biden, Harris, and Biden, he didn't, he's the popular vote, it's a pretty good margin, but it's about 3.74%. And so it didn't match the expectations of the polls. So I think the polls created an expectation that there would be, a major landslide, which didn't really turn out to be the case. Now, also obviously, the Electoral College makes things look closer than they actually are, because just of the way that it's structured, and there were close votes, not that close, but there were some close votes in states like in the upper Midwest, like Wisconsin, and of course in Arizona and Georgia. But ultimately it was not really a very close election. The other thing is Raza mentioned, is it was a very high turnout election. There was about a 68% turnout rate in this election, which is the highest since 1900. But you should keep in mind that the U.S. still has very low voter turnout rates, comparatively to many European countries. So it was a high turnout rate for us, but it wasn't like a great turnout rate compared to other places that we like to compare ourselves to. Also, the other thing is there were some interesting demographic trends that happened in the election. I've been reading some of the exit polling, which I'm a little bit skeptical about, but there were clearly some surprises for the Democrats. Especially in South Florida, Miami-Dade County, went heavily for, it shifted heavily towards the Republicans, and also South Texas shifted towards the Republicans. NPR has actually got a very helpful map that shows the shifts from red to blue across all the counties in the US. And you can see where, the Democrats sort of picked up some votes and where they lost votes. And, California is very blue. Detroit, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, those are the places in some ways where the election was decided. New York, interestingly, almost across the board in every county in New York, shifted towards Republicans. Not that they won seats or that Trump won the counties, but that there was a slight move towards the Republican Party, which I think, is worth investigating. I guess what's going to be sort of debated over the next 4 years and maybe longer is, what's the coalition that's going to come out of this? Is there some kind of new Democratic coalition involving suburban, urban voters, different regions of the country, like Arizona and Georgia, that weren't really in play before? Or is this an election some kind of an anomaly because of all the weirdness that's been going on with the pandemic and everything else? Another point I'd just like to make is we didn't have a civil war on election day. I don't know if anybody saw the Ron Suskind article called The Day After the Election, but he was kind of predicting this, apocalyptic calamity where there would be somebody would shoot somebody in Philadelphia, and then that would give Trump the opportunity to bring in, I don't know, the National Guard or something, and that would completely disrupt the election. Of course, none of that ever happened. Trump's done everything he possibly can to try to argue that the election's been fraudulent, et cetera, but those efforts have largely been, ineffective. I was a little concerned yesterday when the Wayne County voting county board members decided they weren't going to vote to certify the election, but that turned around pretty quickly. So I think a lot of the apocalyptic stuff that was predicted before the election didn't turn out to be the case. That doesn't mean that, that there won't be bad things happening in the future. I'll just make a couple other quick points because I want to turn my time over to other panelists, turn some time over to other panelists. But one question I have is what happens with Trumpism without Trump? Is there such a thing as Trumpism, or is Trumpism only Trump? And I don't really know the answer to that question, but there have been other demagogues in American history, Father Coughlin, Joe McCarthy, and once they went off the scene, it wasn't like there was some, movement that really, kept together once they were gone. So I think that's sort of an interesting question. And the last point I would make is just about Biden as president. He's an inside the system guy. He's had more congressional experience than any president since Lyndon Johnson. So we haven't had anybody in office like that for a while. And, we don't really know how that's going to work. Who knows what's going to happen in the Senate races in Georgia? I'm not really all that optimistic the Democrats can pick up those seats. But let's say that they don't. Can Biden work across the aisle in some way with, the Republicans, Mitch McConnell? I think he wants to try. I'll just end with a thing that I remember that Obama said during one of his one of the White House one of those, I can't remember what they're called, the White House press, when they have all the jokes. Anyway, Biden made this quip where he said, people ask me why I don't have dinner with Mitch McConnell. And then he said, would you want to have dinner with Mitch McConnell? And, I thought, no, I'd never want to have dinner with Mitch McConnell. But Joe Biden actually probably would want to have dinner with Mitch McConnell. And that in some ways is a difference between them. And I don't know how that's going to work out, but I'm willing to give him a chance, at least for a while, to see where it goes. I'll just stop with that.